guys, welcome back! This week we'll be discovering a video game developer formed by the best European programmers and musicians known for their amazing work on the Atari ST DemoScene. Let's take a look. You probably have already heard all about the demo scene from the Atari ST and Amiga days, but what you probably didn't know is that from those groups rose a software developer known by the name of Thalion Software. Thalion was born in 1988 in this little town of Gütersloh in Germany, and the main goal was to gather all the coding masters from the demo scene and create games for the popular 16-bit home computers of the time, the Atari ST, the Amiga and even the PC. But what is this demo scene thing after all? The demo scene is simply a form of computer art that was used to show off coding, musical and artistic skills. These demos pushed boundaries and almost went beyond the limitations of the machines for which they were made. This sort of hobby dates back as far as late 70s and also spawned piracy as we knew it back in late 80s with their famous Cracktros. These intros and demos then evolved into this form of computer art. So Thalion Software was composed of members from the best European demo scene groups. The exceptions, also known as TAX, TNT Crew, Quartermass Experiment, The Lost Boys, The Care Bears, Gigabyte Crew, etc. These groups were known for pushing the Amiga and Atari ST to do things no one thought it was possible. And having all these awesome coders and musicians working together was a dream come true to every 16-bit home computer enthusiast. Their first step was to gather some money to be able to publish their own games. So they sold the company to Areola Soft that quickly signed a deal with Grand Slam Entertainment to be able to penetrate the highly lucrative UK market. Thalion's first game was a RPG by the name of Dragonflight, but it suffered a series of delays and was consequently left aside and replaced by Chambers of Shaolin, highly inspired by Karateka. It was released in 1989 for the Amiga, Atari ST, PC and even the Commodore 64. A kind of unique feature was that we had to train our martial artist before he could face the real world, and the superb soundtrack, well, just listen to it. It was 4 years later also released for the Amiga CD32. It was a pretty good start for Thalion's first venture into video game development, so things would get even better. The very peak of creativity for video game development on 16-bit home computers was reached in late 80s, and Thalion had all the skills needed to triumph. In 1990, Thalion released their first year compilation for the Atari ST and Amiga, which included a Thalion t-shirt along with 4 games. Then in 1991, the very first ever officially licensed flight simulator, a 320 Airbus. A year after, in 1992, the Amber trilogy was set in motion, with Amber Star being the first title to be released for the Amiga, ST and PC. An adventure RPG with an amazing storyline that revealed as a huge success, being praised all over the press. It was followed by Amber Moon that saw its Atari ST and PC versions cancelled. So, this Amiga exclusive game had elements that simply reminded me of Eye of the Beholder and Wolfenstein 3D, being also well received by the press. However, the trilogy was interrupted in this second title. The third game ended up being cancelled, with Thalion shutting down all operations by 1994 due to lack of money. Still in 1992, no second prize blew everyone away, being Thalion's very last Atari ST title, and it still is very impressive today. The later games were of an even incredible quality, and Lion Art is my favorite Thalion video game and featured in PixelThing's episode 52 about my top 26 Amiga games that I invite you all to watch. Besides the state-of-the-art music and graphics, Lionheart features differently generated environments depending on the difficulty setting chosen by the player in the beginning of the game. Thalion's attention to detail with beautiful graphics, astonishing music and overwhelming storytelling was due to the team's true passion for video games. After Thalion's demise, other companies were created, and many of their members are still working in the video game industry, like Tim Moss, who went on working for Sony as lead programmer for the God of War franchise, and Henk Nieborg, that was hired by Psygnosis and worked for instance on Lomax, besides a lot others. As for Jochen Ippel, one of the greatest musicians of the 16-bit era, he simply stopped composing music, so his work acquired a huge cult following and will certainly live on. By the way, he was a true pioneer and known as a composer who released the first ever studio recorded album of video game music. So guys, hope you've enjoyed this episode, and if you did, like, share and subscribe to the PixelThing. Also, take a look at these examples of video game related documentaries that I simply love to create. The complete story of Imagine Software and Psygnosis, and also a look back at Evolution Studios that was recently shut down by Sony, but fortunately many of their artists were meanwhile hired by Codemasters. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all next week.